And again, this is Manistee River, so we don't have a lot of great runs we have more sand than rock. So there's not bait fish sitting in the sand. So for me, like, I think of it like, what is the fish attracted to? So you can dull it out with possum or like some of the Sanyo, like how I did that fly. If you do name some of the colors, because it's like brown or not shrimp, but light tan.
UV shrimp is. Yeah. I like that one.
You like that one?
Yeah. Well, great. What are we trying next, John?
So we're going to go down, like, first we want to downsize. Secondly, we want to capitalize on our opportunity. So we're going to downsize, and the reason we're downsizing is because water is cold. For me, like, I can get away with this bigger fly when the water's warmer. So now we're going to try to tie something that's a little bit smaller. And it's also something that I start running in the winter, and it's also something that works really good in the spring. And I think it'd actually be, I know that Trout Spey is coming along, It's getting more and more followers, and something that if you took this to, say, Hodenpile or Mayo, and you just wanted to swing instead of strip, that this style of fly would work and this fly combination would work. So we get a lot of bait fish in the spring. A lot of it is from our salmon. So we're going to set something up, and I'm going to show I'll tie one fly, but I'll talk about how we can make it complicated or we can make it really easy. So it's just like, how much time do I have? And then what do I want to add to it? So I'm going to tie it in my head. I'm hunting slower water, so I'm going to lighten it up. And one of the things that I really like, and if you saw the smallmouth video from last year, is I do this series that I learned from Kevin Feenstra, but I just nicknamed it the Hammerhead series for after the shark. So I'm going to take 4 bead chain, and I'm going to bring them here into the front. On this one, I kind of, they call it recessed or put back my dumbbell eyes. This one I'm going to push as far forward as I can. So I'm going to kind of pull them forward. And again, I always flip them under. And that's going to, there's not going to be anything that's going to be in front of those eyes. And I always add them in first to help me out with my proportions. And then because of how I lock in my Power Pro, it helps me not have to tie over the Power Pro.
And proportions are one of those things that just...
best scissors to cut your Power Pro.
I would take a guess at maybe the prime scissors if you're doing the loon thing.
Yes. The prime 5 inches are perfect.
Not the 4s.
Nope.
5s.
All right. So, Matt, we're going to kind of just take a chance here. And we're going to use a non-fly hook. And maybe this opens Pandora's box and all sorts of ugliness. But we're actually going to tie on a treble hook.
Where am I going to put all these? Hold on. Hold that up real quick. A little bit lower. You didn't prep me about this.
I know. I took a chance. So we're happy to take questions on this. This is something that I've also done for over probably 15 years.
Some hot takes here, probably.
That's all right. So the conception in my head before I did it was that this would be harmful. And it's actually not as harmful as the last hook that I tied on there. Especially if you go to the size 10 or smaller, like a 12. Bigger treble hooks, I can get behind that argument. It's like having 3 of the hooks that I put on there.
Sure.
So if you debarb these, it is so easy to get these out of a fish. And they don't have, I've never have one bleed. And when they touch it, their lips get stuck closed. And they, it's not like it gets down and hooked over there.
No, because you're going to probably hook them before you get too deep, right? Yep. I mean, that's part of the idea. Anyway,
I've really liked it. And when I'm swinging flies and I get that little baby nip and it just goes dum, dum. And I'm like, that's all you got? That's my grab today? I'm like, where is my baby trebles? So then I understand, I'm like, I'm too big and they're not going to run away with it. And it's always on that temp drop. It's when I come from 40s to 30s and I'm headed down.
Sure.
Then it's like I'm in trouble. So, but when it steadies back out, then I can go back because then the fish are comfortable in that zone again. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, and I took a chance, and I was like, you know.
Well, we appreciate you trusting us
Yeah,
with.
no problem. All right, so I did the same kind of double loop as the first fly. So I have 4 strands. This is a lighter hook, and you're already seeing that it won't bend. Like, it's just going to stay there. So it's very rigid. It sits right in the material. I don't quite bring it back quite as far. Loop it in there and then bring these back. I'm only going to go back a little bit on this shank. Got your Tower Pro. Now we're set. All right. So Alex talked about in his video his favorite little brush. This guy right here. Let's see if I get the name right. Bait fish brush. Is that this right one?
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it's the stiff one.
It's a stiff one.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, I left mine at home, and Matt had an extra. So
Always.
get all your bait fish brushes here. Same thing on Matt's or Alex's fly. Less is more with this material, but it gives me a place, you know, it's like I'm creating like a, what they call it, a dubbing ball. When you're doing your marabou flies. So 2 wraps, 3 wraps at the most. Come in. Lock that in. All right, so that's going to help support my flash. One of my favorite streamers when I was stripping streamers for Kings was a flash deceiver. And that was kind of like what my mind thought of when I was going to tie this fly, is that it had kind of like flash coming out of a Clouser minnow. So having the tail, like undulate, the bait fish tail, being hid then by most of the material, kind of where my head was. So we're going to use some pink. And this one is by Acrylic stuff.
There we go. Which also looks like Polar Flash.
Yes. Yep.
Kind of a twisted and straight
Yep.
blend, which
Yep.
is always a nice.
Yep.
Gives you different movements in the water, different reflections with light.
So now we're just kind of coming back, looking at the length of our fly. We're going to go just slightly past our hook length. We're going to lock that in. And then I don't know, I tied this with a lot of my smallmouth flies as well. Lateral scale, 1/69th opal.
One of my personal favorite
Yeah.
materials.
Yep.
Goes in
I know
almost
I shared
everything.
this last year, but it was so interesting how the guys, when we fished for Dorado, same for them. And a little goes a long way. So all my smallmouth flies that I like to tie usually have 2 or 3 strands. Same here. I'm just going to have that hold back. I'm going to trim that here in a second. It's the only way I know how to call this color is 6915. Blue.
I believe that's
Seafoam?
it's not seafoam's a little bit more green. I believe that's electric or sky blue.
There you go.
I think it's sky blue.
And this one,
We'll get to the bottom of it. Don't
yeah,
worry.
we'll find 6915.
I can't wait for people to call. Yeah, we.
Taper it a little bit. Lay that right on there. We'll pull this back. Lock that flash in. And come back and grab all this. You guys aren't supposed to see these scissors yet as they're not out.
Oh, top secret.
Don't call. Tapers it automatically for you.
Man,
All right.
You
And
think
we're
they
done.
might call them
We're all
taper
set.
scissors? That's it?
I wish.
Oh,
All right.
it's like
So there's two ways, and I'm going to do the more difficult way, and I'll probably mess it up, but we're going to do a loop, a dubbing loop, and we're going to do it with craft fur. The other one that works really well, and Matt, I'll need a little bit of help, is the Sanyo.
it would be
Fox fur?
is it a foxy or a chromatic?
Could be the chromatic, but it's
Is there some
Emerald
flash in it?
Shiner
Yeah, it's chromatic.
Chromatic.
3-inch Senyo's
Yep.
chromatic brush
With Fox.
EP. And it's a blend of, so it's going to be, that's a blend of Arctic Fox,
Yep.
some EP fibers, and some flash.
Yep.
And it's awesome.
Yep.
It's
So
great.
then-
It's the right amount of bulk. It's
Yep.
the right amount of flash, and you get the taper to it.
Yes.
Which is,
So you could be done here. If you
Yeah.
put that
Oh,
in
yeah,
there,
absolutely.
wrap 3 times, and you'd be done. And you have yourself a little type of minnow fly. So, and that's kind of where the concept in my head. But for here, we're going to see if I can do this on camera. I did practice today, and it worked out really well. So we're going to use our shepherd's tool. And then we need a little bit of wax. Hit that there. Bring this and just kind of get rid of this real quick. Does that mess anything up?
no.
All right. Fox or craft fur gray olive gray, money. Like, as you can see, I barely used this one. All right, we're gonna come in and cut ourselves a little hunk. And one thing with craft fur, and I didn't really talk about it, but I'll pinch it in my hand, and then is it all good here?
That's great. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
Is I
Perfect.
need to get rid of this stuff. As you see, like, you know, I don't have any pets at home, and I don't have any hair on my head, but we just don't want this in there.
Really doesn't serve a purpose unless you're really trying to build bulk, and you want to do like a reverse tie.
Yep.
It's
But
like
in a
we're
dubbing
finishing
loop,
each other's sentence.
nightmare.
Yeah.
So you can also take, if you want to get everything out, take your comb, get that. All right. So what I'm going to do is just lay that on the table for a second. And then this guy here, we're going to add a little bit of flash.
Were you quick to the ripple ice fiber? It took me a little while,
Yeah,
and
no, I was actually probably a little slow.
me too. I was too slow. I was just terrified it was going to end up like Ice Wing, which
Yeah.
I
Nightmare.
I will admit I kind of detest a little bit. Unless you're making brushes,
Yes.
then Ice Wing is
Yes.
is fantastic. But
So we're going to add that into our mix. So we just have this big ugly mix.
Yep.
And now I'm just going to pull and separate. Pull and separate.
do you usually do these by hand, or have you played with the composite loop setup?
Yeah. So I bought the whole thing.
Okay.
And I sat up there in Muskyville and I made my own brushes. And they were never the same. It was like so hard to get consistency.
It's clump,
yeah.
nothing,
Yeah.
clump, nothing.
So I didn't spend
okay, it's
enough
not
time
just
with
me.
it. Yeah, no.
Okay.
I think everybody there's some really good people that I see on the old Instagrams do some really cool things, but then I'm just
They're not doing it live though, John.
that's true.
It's all that
So-
editing, I think.
But then you can come into this wonderful fly shop and you can go, hey, a foxy brush.
Yeah.
And you can take it.
It's just
and that's
so
where
fast,
this is
so
a guide
easy.
fly. You can go. But sometimes you don't get enough, like with ripple ice in there. So we're going to try to open up our loop and come in there. And then we're going to try to pull our fibers a little bit and then kind of like just pull them apart. And this was just so that our show was longer, Matt.
That's right. I can't hit the fast forward button here.
What is he doing?
Usually do this mostly by hand. Do you ever use a bodkin or anything?
Oh,
Can
no.
pick stuff out?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
But that would be a good upsell.
Well, I mean, I'll use the bodkin once I spin.
Okay.
You know, just to, if anything clumps, because sometimes that ripple ice fiber
yeah, no, it's going to
will clump a little bit.
Then I just kind of like, I'll do a couple little spins and I'll pull on it. Any questions out there?
Well, we got people are flying to buy trebles in droves here, nice. So it's. We had an observation about somebody catching fish more with kind of basic setups, you know, with purple and spun deer hair than real elaborate stuff, and I think there's definitely something to that. If it's a confidence fly, it's all about just putting it in front of fish.
Oh yeah, no, so, I mean, I think like anything, especially what would be interesting, like just talking about the deer hair and purple or whatever, is that understanding how low water was. Deer hair is going to give you like an ability to hold that fly at that column level. Right. It'll like come up like a zoo cougar or whatever, you know. So it's like keeping it in that zone as you had a sink tip. That would be a good way to use deer hair, especially in a low clear water year, you know. So no, all good stuff.
Usually stick to those blue eyes.
I was just more like I had blue flash on this one, but I have a whole bag. I could do pink, I could do black, but it was just more like, you know, I'm very like, it's hard for me to match my clothes right. So I thought I actually was doing a good job with the blue ones.
I think it looks great.
Okay.
How often do you, and this is a question from me, how often do you hook your hands here working with the trebles versus single hooks?
Well, that is something I probably actually hurt myself more with the singles, but you know, coming through like right now, I don't want to like come back but
it's all in that combing back motion that just gets you.
The craft fur here is not quite as long as the fly. So.
Oh, we did have someone ask how much are tickets for Muskieville. It sounds like a.
I like that person. That guy's funny, or woman. Sorry.
That would be Jeff Larson.
There you go. Good job, Jeff. Made me laugh.
It's like one of those big concerts in the woods, right? It's kind of set stuff on fire and just shoot stuff up in the UP and.
Oh, I was so proud of Alex too with the hand done whip finish. I was like, oh, he's my hero. Don't need it.
But Loon does make a great whip.
I know they do. All right, so there's the smaller version. Then we can bust out our marker.
Do you put those barrings on pretty much everything you can, if it's an option?
What I like about it is I don't know. I don't know if it's like that same thing about a confidence thing.
Sure.
But like I know when it came from smallmouth. Now I bring it into steelhead, is that if I break up the flash,
sure,
then it's not quite as blingy. And it was interesting listening to the last week's video with Brian talking about how he was taking flash out of his smallmouth baits. And I was just like, wow, I was adding more flash to my smallmouth baits. And again, it was but I was also using more marker,
sure,
in like dulling it out. But like flash would just give me movement in my flies that I just couldn't get.
Right. Flash. Things. And that's a really good point that not many people talk about, is those really thin strands of flash offer more than just bling.
Yep.
It's this enticing wiggle movement, especially if you're fishing like we're talking about, slower water, where you have smallmouth or steelhead and you're fishing either a hover or a pause or a dangle, and it just gives you that enticing back and forth, up and down movement that, I mean, it's tough to find even in natural materials sometimes. I mean, there's not that many materials that do that. So,
and I think like you hit it right on the head in my mind when you were just talking about it, just like that's why I tie with so much flash for these fish that will respond to it.
Right.
And one fish that I don't tie a lot of flash with is what Alex is fishing for. The majority what his presentation was done is about trout. And it's like I don't bring it into that realm as much because I just haven't had really good success with it. But things that are curious for me, steelhead and smallmouth,
sure, is
that I can pull them in with the bling, and then if I get the movement, then I'm like, ooh, I got you.
Close the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Wrong button.